Shahab Neman, is the current CEO of Cal Solar. Prior to this, Sean worked for the City of Los Angeles in the planning department as both a zoning and construction student professional worker and a division of land student professional worker. Sean also interned at Casden Properties LLC as a market analyst and as a capital real estate investments and as an investment associate. So Sean has experience in both the public and private sector, giving him a well-rounded perspective on the solar industry. And he's a motivated individual with a passion for renewable energy and a commitment to making Cal Solar the leading solar company in California. Do it, Sean. Leading.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you guys see me and hear me just fine?
Yeah, you sound great. You look great.
Awesome. Awesome. Good to see you, Sean. For those of you who don't know, I've known Sean, over 10 years probably now.
Yeah.
I've been on Sean's farm. So that was really cool. And so thank you for inviting me to be here today.
And you've been one of like the primary solar installers in so many of our projects because you offer really affordable solar and great service and great design. And so welcome. Thank you for sharing with us all your leadership work.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you. Awesome. So thank you guys for all being here. We've worked with a lot of people in the room, and so I'm excited to tell you guys kind of what's happening in the industry and what to expect moving forward. So Sean, were these the two slides you asked us not to go over?
Just like, introduce your company quickly.
Awesome. So we're a design build solar contractor throughout California. And what really differentiates us from most other companies is we have a significant focus in new construction. So we're often brought on by the architect or developer to do design only scope first, and then their GC brings us on to do a build only scope, which both the engineering and construction throughout California, we self-perform with about 10 in-house engineers and over 100 people in the field throughout California. Okay, great. So the first piece on solar I'd like to discuss is the energy code requirements for low-rise multifamily. The code was enacted, the new code for low-rise solar was enacted under the 2019 code requiring solar on all low-rise multifamily. And the definition of low-rise is any building that has 3 habitable stories or less. So if you have a building with a story of tuck under parking and then 3 stories of multifamily there above, then it is still considered low rise and you do have to do solar on it. And the amount of solar you have to do just depends on the conditioned floor area and the amount of energy being used in the building. Otherwise, you have to leave the room. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that's fine. I'll hold the baby. Thank you. She's gonna sit on your lap because she's and so that code that took into effect January 1st, 2020 is still in place for low rise. So low rise multifamily throughout California is still required to do solar. And there are several exceptions to the code, but for the most part, it's really hard to get around the code requirement. Now, the biggest change coming up is the new 2022 energy code that went into effect January 1st of 2023, which basically, I'm talking to probably a lot of energy modelers here, but any project that submits its building plan check after January 1st of 2023, it must follow the new 2022 code. As a part of that code, you must install solar PV and batteries on multifamily of 4 stories and higher. You must also install solar PV and batteries on commercial of any height. And the low-rise multifamily 3 stories or less, you no longer, you don't have to install a battery. You're still just a PV only requirement. And there's additional requirements for EV charging as well. And the amount of solar and batteries you must install is based on the amount of energy the building's supposed to use. So based all on the conditioned floor area of the building. And then every climate zone is every project is given also a capacity factor based on the climate zone and the building type. And if you're unable to meet the sizing based on the calculation, you can use the SARA, or the solar access roof area, to find a different exception to amount of solar you must put on. So this is an example of the capacity factors for solar and batteries on the new code. So it's all dependent on your climate zone. So here in the dark blue at the top is your climate zone. And then on this axis is the building type. So it gives you the capacity factor to use in this calculation, for the amount of PV, and then you use that information to basically size the battery as well. So these are some examples of different project types in different cities and climate zones, and how much solar and battery you need to install. Sean asked that I cover what projects are going to cost moving forward, and it's really a moving target. The reason is a lot of us may be in affordable housing and already have prevailing wage projects, but the California legislature just passed a bill called AB 2143 that requires prevailing wage to be paid on every private works job starting 2024, other than single family homes. So if you're building, and other than multifamily of 2 stories or less, but basically if you're in one of the 3 IOUs and you're building multifamily of 3 stories plus, and not a single family home, you must pay prevailing wage on a private works job. So this is really gonna exacerbate the problem for skilled labor availability in our industry. There's already a big, glut of certified journeyman electricians in our industry, and the new code enacted is just gonna make that issue worse and worse and worse. But generally speaking, gone are the days where solar was, anywhere even sub $2 a watt. On some industrial buildings, we were able to get solar installed for sub $2 a watt. And, through the years, we used to even see solar at $2.35 a watt, $2.40 a watt, so on and so forth. For rooftop projects on multifamily. But again, I think we're going to see a 30 or 40% increase on those costs because of the new Assembly Bill 2143.
And I heard you say $2 right now. It's about $2.40 a watt, or 2,400 a kilowatt.
Correct. So I'll go over the cost there. The costs really come down to region. Typically, Northern California is going to be a little bit higher in cost than Southern California because of the cost of labor. And then also the voltage of the building, like the electrical voltage of the building, the number of interconnections, and the roof type. So just real quick, just to do solar 101, you have a solar PV module here that accepts power from the sun in DC ratio, and then you use an inverter. An inverter is typically either in the form of a string inverter that you see here, or a micro inverter that you use per every one or four modules, I should say. And then you have however you're going to attach to the roof. In this case, this is a stanchion typically on a new construction wood frame roof, where you want to span over pipes and vents, and then you're racking. So and then a group of modules together is known as the array. But Going into costs, your lowest cost always is going to be the picture above here on the top right. That's a ballasted system. That typically has a few to zero penetrations depending on the zone and the layout. And sorry guys, 1 second. But it's really hard to do a ballasted system on a multifamily building because there's a lot of vents and pipes typically on a flat roof multifamily. And we found that it's really hard to get the other trades, the other MEPs to relocate vents and pipes. So I wouldn't recommend trying to design a ballasted system on a multifamily site. It also takes up a lot more space than a traditional stanchion system like we've shown here. So you get less kilowatts of power out of your roof if you do a ballasted system on multifamily. And if I had to throw a ballpark number, if you were to do ballasted under the new, requirements of prevailing wage labor, I would say it's probably around $2.25 a watt and up to, maybe $2.75, just depending on the system size. I always recommend installing solar on carports if you have a covered parking requirement anyway. It's a lot more cost effective and less penetrations on your roof to install on a carport. So anytime we see a site plan where there's dotted lines all over the carport areas signifying a covered parking requirement, then we land as much PV as we need on the carports first, then we focus on the roof. After a ballasted system and a carport system, the next cheapest way to install solar is on a comp shingle roof. So a pitched comp shingle roof. Or if you do have a tile roof, we recommend you put comp shingle under the area where there's solar panels, and then you tile around the solar panels. So you still get that tile look, but it's more cost effective to attach to the comp shingle than the tile, and you won't be able to see the comp shingle because the solar panels will be over it. You also have the option of an elevated trellis. We're doing several of these as of late. You're basically elevating the array about 7 feet off the roof height, so you can span over mechanical equipment and vents, pipes. Basically, someone could walk under these arrays. So that's really an option for those looking to get to your net zero goals and maximize production. Maybe you're going for a QAC. If you're in affordable housing, then we always recommend a trellis system. It is more costly, but if your QAC is very valuable, I'd go this route.
Can I ask, you said that, $2,400 a kilowatt was about what you're doing for rooftop. What does the trellis and maybe the trellis and the carport, because those are two things that elevate the solar panels. Right. What about their cost adds? Right. So
the carports, depending on whether the entire project is prevailing wage or not, can cost you about $1.30 a watt to maybe $1.50 a watt. And mind you, the carports, if there's no prevailing wage requirement on the entire job, then the carports can be regular wage, because the new assembly bill only has to do with the solar, not the support structure. So that's about $1.30 to $1.50 a watt. And then the solar on the carports is going to be probably, again, $2.25 to $2.50 a watt. So combine those numbers together, you get it's probably around $3.50 lowest, all the way up to $4.50, depending whether you're in one of the higher prevailing wage zones like San Francisco County or Santa Clara County.
Compared to the trellis, then?
Yes, you can probably get a trellis in the 450 on the higher end of that spectrum, probably a 450 a watt range. But again, my whole point of the carport is, if you have a covered parking requirement anyways, that's the way to go. And even then, I would argue if you do have parking available and you don't have a covered parking requirement, but you're trying to choose between the trellis and the carport, I might go for the carport because it's easier to install from a labor perspective. So it probably end up being cheaper anyways. And then you're also providing a shaded parking amenity to your tenants.
Thank you.
On most multifamily, we recommend an attached system shown here on the right. The attached system basically uses one of these stanchion bases here to a wood block that your framer installs. And we like those because then we can span over vents and pipes. And it's not quite as elevated as a trellis system, but it's still about 2 to 4 feet off the roof. So we could span over vents and pipes. Then you've got your carport systems on structures. This shows a parking structure solar system that just covers the parking spaces. What's getting pretty popular now is also doing a superstructure that covers the entire roof level of the parking, including the drive aisles. So that's, but again, assuming most of the people here today are in multifamily and single family, obviously you don't see as many parking structures. Ground mounts are very cost effective, but land in California is pretty expensive. So I don't see a lot of, housing assets having extra land for a ground mount, but that's always an option as well to do a ground mount system. And then finally, on existing buildings, we don't want to rip up the roof. If you're doing a rehab, we don't want to rip up a flat roof to put in blocking and stanchions. So we use what's known as a U-anchor system. So these, if I can zoom in a little bit, these are what's known as like a deck mount only attachment. You can use a brand called U-anchor or a brand called OMG. It's a deck mount only attachment, and with very long lag bolts that go through the deck. And we can use these in retrofit scenarios, except because they don't have a wood block or something substantial to hold them, you just have a lot more attachment points than a typical, say, a stanchion system. With a stanchion system, because we're having the framer install that wood block, you don't have as many attachment points. And then just on the battery side, what you're going to basically see moving forward is smaller batteries in the multifamily and single family setting. You're not going to see a bigger container size battery like you see here. So there's several options. You have something like a smaller battery, about 20 kWh shown in this picture. These could be mounted in a specific room, or they could also be mounted on the roof. There's a newer technology known as Yotta Energy, YOTTA. The Yotta battery comes in a 1 kilowatt-hour block. We're very excited about this product because it can mount directly behind the solar array, so you don't have to find space in an electrical room in a conditioned or fire rated room for, say, a battery like this. You could just do it on the roof here. So we're very, and when it comes in 1 kilowatt-hour blocks, it's very modular. You can just meet exactly how much you need. If you need 70 kilowatt hours, you just throw 70 of these on, instead of, if you need 70 and you have to use one of these Solarcs, then you need to throw 4 on, which is 80 kilowatt hours. And then finally, you have your ground level standalone batteries. Typically, these need a lot of coordination, and you need a special dedicated pad and you need to coordinate underground with civil utilities. So, and these are typically bigger in size. So we're advising our clients with limited space and, it's hard to coordinate these rooms or pads. So we're either advising clients to go this Yada roof route or this Solar roof route and put it on the roof. This slide also basically summarizes what I just verbally shared. And obviously batteries are newer technologies. And so we always try to recommend a battery that is cutting edge, but not bleeding edge. And so there's a lot of factors that you need to, review before committing to a battery, including, dimensions, whether outdoor and indoor, lead times is a factor. So it's important that you select a consultant or provider. This is a little bit self-serving, but I think it's very true. We've inherited a lot of solar designs where the solar design or battery design was done by either an electrician or a solar designer. And what we found is that because those constituents don't have real world experience building these projects, the design is incorrect, or they might design with an obsolete module because they're not constantly in touch with manufacturers knowing, hey, this is the wattage class of module that's going to be ready in a year from now when you reach your roof level of this project. So I always encourage you guys to look for a design builder that does both design and build. If you're in new construction, I always recommend you work with a design builder that has the engineering staff in-house and has specific experience doing a lot of projects within that building department, and also within the utility company, because all the utility companies have different interconnection requirements. The way they want you to interconnect your solar system to their grid varies. Even the 3 IOU utilities that fall under, I believe, the Sempra, the Sempra group, they each have their own different interconnection requirements, and even within one utility, there you can either interconnect via several different interconnection tariffs or methods, including virtual net metering aggregation, or net energy metering, and each of those interconnections has specific requirements. Just a brief, touching briefly on the SOMA program. There is a incentive program available to existing multifamily affordable housing projects within the 3 investor-owned utilities. And the amount of the incentive depends on how much of the solar generation you would like to give to your tenants versus the common area. The more you give to your tenants and less to the common area, the higher your incentive. And we've had projects where the cost, the incentive will pay for the entire cost of the project, but I doubt that is still true moving forward, because of the new prevailing wage requirements the state has enacted, and also because we found that a lot of the larger portfolios with lower hanging fruit have already participated in the SOMA program. But nevertheless, it's a great program that incentivizes solar generation for your tenants and your common areas. And it's something to be considered by any developer. But again, the key point on the SOMA program is that it's only on affordable housing and existing buildings within the 3 investor-owned utilities. And this slide covers a little bit more about other requirements. You have to be, your deed restriction must have at least 10 more years on it. Your tenants must be separately metered for electricity. At least 51% of the solar generation must go to the tenants, and you must at least be within one of these affordability bands. So to recap quickly, the cost of solar really depends on your attachment method to the building. It all depends on where you attach your buildings. And the point I want to make is I encourage all of you and your developer clients to engage a design consultant very, very early, a solar and battery design consultant early. So when you start, 25% CDs, make sure somebody's on, because the solar impacts so many different trades and so many other design consultants that it's really behooves you to get someone experienced on the design and build portion on as early as possible. And with that, I'll open it up with questions.
Woo! Woo!
And again, my apologies for the.
No.
They have a fan club over here.
No.
Thank you. I probably work from home like once every 4 months, and then every time I'm like, oh, I think I should do it, then I get reminded that I have these beautiful animals running around, and I need to wait a few more years until it's actually realistic.
Yeah, I feel you. Back when we met, if you might recall, I had like 2-year-olds, and they would like jump on the couch while I was having meetings right next to me, not like separated by any distance, immediately next to my desk. It's rough stuff. So the questions. So Alice LaPierre wanted to know, how stackable are the Yada batteries? Is there a limit to how many you can have in a system? Not like physically stackable, but like
there's no limit. I mean, the limit is the space, like having the space. And also I guess one of the limitations is we're working with Yada to develop how to mount them in a room or on a carport should you not have your array on the roof. Because really the only place right now, the way they've designed it, is either behind a baluster system, a stanchion system, or a trellis system. If you have a comp shingle pitch roof or a carport, or you want to put the batteries in a room, currently there's no attachment method yet, but this is their biggest market, and they're highly focused on delivering for those markets as well.
Pam Good over at Van Meter Williams Pollock asks, does the Yada or any of the batteries trigger fire sprinkler requirements?
No, they do not.
That is a relief. Well, we are at time. So thank you so much, Sean. Yay!
Thank you all. And Sean, thank you for setting this up and always being, probably the leader in California in energy and renewables. And so it's awesome to get to know you and see all that you do for this state.
Stand on the shoulders of giants. I have a partner, Michael, who's my silent giant that I'm always standing on. So, no, it's a team effort. Thank you very much, though.